Between 1957's The Adventures of Twizzle and 2005's New Captain Scarlet, Gerry Anderson produced 18 television shows, all of which still enjoy varying degrees of popularity to this day. Along the way, however, he also produced several one-off television projects, some of which made it to screen, and some of which that he decided the world would be better off never seeing. Here is the story of one of those.
Even the best laid plans go wrong.
The Investigator was shot in Malta in 1973, shortly after production concluded on the second season of The Protectors, and was to be another hybrid of supermarionation and live action.
Prepare yourself for a rough ride.
Unlike the Secret Service, however, The Investigator would be filmed entirely on location, without the resources of a fully equipped studio to fall back on.
The whole thing shouldn't take more than half an hour.
This 25-minute pilot episode was devised by the Andersons to show to their friend George Heinemann, then Vice President of Children's Programming at NBC, in the hopes that he might commission a full series.
Same as before.
As things turned out, however, Heinemann would never see the finished pilot, because everything that could go wrong did go wrong on The Investigator.
Well, let's see what our visual scanner tells us.
The premise of The Investigator involves a benevolent emissary from an alien planet arriving on Earth hoping to
make your world a better place.
After encountering two human teenagers named John and Julie, he promptly reduces them to 1/3 normal size so that they can go and do all the hard work for him, while he hangs around in a cave in Malta being mysterious.
That, of course, is the whole idea.
Even more bizarrely, the pilot chooses not to show us any of this and instead opens with John and Julie post-miniaturization waiting for instructions from the Investigator. For their very first mission, he assigns them the formidable task of stopping a portly chap in a blue suit from stealing a painting from a church.
But how can we stop him? And why us?
Because you represent the hope of the future.
Probably safe to say that the Investigator's intricate master plan to save humanity is gonna take a while.
We're so helpless like this.
Not if you make use of the special powers I am about to give you.
These powers included John's instant and apparently total expertise regarding any piece of technology, plus whatever else the plot needs him to know about.
How do you know all this?
It's like I always have.
And Julie's power of being Julie. Oh, she uses the telephone at one point, yeah, that's right.
It doesn't matter who I am.
Malta is, however, a pretty big place for two tiny teens, so John and Julie are going to need some way to get around. And, since stealth is clearly vitally important to their mission, the Investigator gives them the noisiest, most conspicuous car in the world and the noisiest, most conspicuous boat in the world. Yeah, that'll do it.
John! Let's give it a little tryout. Hold on, Julie.
And so John and Julie roar their way to the church, just in time to completely fail to prevent the painting from being stolen. But they get it back in the end, so that's okay.
You have both done well on your first mission.
Throughout the story, their reduced size doesn't really provide any particular benefit or hindrance to their mission, almost as if it was entirely unnecessary to begin with.
Oddly enough, sir, so are we.
The puppets that would portray John and Julie were created especially for the Investigator, in the same human-like proportions as those first seen in Captain Scarlet. However, unlike those of their predecessors, the eyes of the John and Julie puppets gave the characters a uniquely sinister quality that only further diminished any appeal this pilot might have had.
You think he was having a nightmare if he saw us?
The voice cast for the Investigator would be something of a Thunderbirds mini reunion. Peter Dineley, the voice of Jeff Tracy, would voice the Investigator himself.
And now your questions will be answered.
While John and Julie would be played by Scott Tracy and Lady Penelope voice artists Shane Rimmer and Sylvia Anderson. Rimmer and Anderson would also collaborate on the script, while her then son-in-law Vic Elms composed the main title theme, and The Protector's composer John Cameron provided the incidental music.
So far, so good.
As for the human performers, the Investigator has some. Kind of. Unfortunately, they all seem thoroughly disinterested by the whole affair, and mostly give the impression that they didn't even know the cameras were rolling.
It had better be.
The villain Stavros Karanti was played by Charles Thake, who had previously appeared as a Maltese police inspector in The Protectors, but who fails to make any kind of impression here thanks to the odd decision to shoot the human actors as far away from the camera as humanly possible, often from behind.
You asked for mercy, Karan. You've shown little of it throughout your life.
We are told that Coranti is a very naughty man, but all we actually get to see is that he really likes this one painting. He apparently lives on the Contessa di Contini's yacht and is locked in a constant battle with his henchmen over who can grow the most amazing moustache.
It's beautiful.
Anderson himself would be taking on 2 roles on The Investigator, that of producer and director, and often found himself in conflict with himself over how best to show off the Malta locations without going too far over budget.
We've got to warn him, John.
As a result, he was thoroughly dissatisfied with the final product, and laid much of the blame squarely at his own door, although many of the production's woes were simply the result of bad luck. Bad weather ruined more than one day's shooting, and the radio-controlled Investigator car would often receive signals from nearby aircraft that could send it speeding out of control to mow down unsuspecting passers-by.
All part of the Investigator service.
Anderson and his team finally returned to England without having shot all the material they'd planned to, and cobbled together the final product from what they had. The results impressed no one.
It will never bring you happiness.
Having enjoyed great success selling models based on vehicles from his previous shows, Dinky Toys was so confident that any new Gerry Anderson series would be a smash hit that they commissioned models of the Investigator's car and boat before the pilot had even been completed.
It's been an hour and still nothing.
Once it was clear that the Investigator would not actually become a full series, they redesigned the toys into generic military vehicles and released them anyway, as an armoured command car in 1975 and a Coast Guard amphibious missile launch in 1977. Some variants of the packaging still pushed the Anderson connection by giving him credit for the Investigator designs, although the original vehicles themselves had actually been designed by Reg Hill. The radio-controlled vehicles used in the episode itself also still survive to this day, and have come up for auctions several times over the last few years.
John, I had the shot. I thought Coranti had killed you.
Sporting new hairdos and new costumes, the John and Julie puppets would also return in 1977 in Alien Attack, a commercial directed by Anderson for Jif dessert toppings.
Flying saucers.
No! Flying dishes!
Faced with an assault of flying desserts, the heroic if clearly somewhat unstable agents of Intergalactic Rescue decide there's only one thing to do.
We'll have to eat them.
Nobody can eat that much, Semolina.
We might, with new Jif dessert toppings. They make desserts delicious.
Hey, we've got 'em licked.
Jif dessert toppings, not only delicious, but they could safeguard the future of mankind.
The Investigator was never aired on television, although it is now available on DVD. Unfortunately, time has done little to increase its appeal, and it remains one of the most lackluster Anderson productions.
Okay, Julie. I think he's had enough.
Even if the project hadn't apparently been cursed from the very beginning, it's difficult to see where a full series could have gone. The idea of a disembodied alien intelligence using human agents to make the world a better place had potential, but the script realises it in such a mundane way by boiling it all down to giving one insignificant art thief a mild scare that the sci-fi element almost seems like an afterthought.
We've wasted enough time.
Its characters are also easily the most uninteresting and unappealing of any Anderson production. Well, except for this goat and this horse. Many Anderson fans wish there could have been more adventures for the Tracy brothers or the residents of Moonbase Alpha, but there are very few who are clamouring for the return of John, Julie, and the Investigator. The Day After Tomorrow, also known as Into Infinity, first aired on NBC in 1975, and then the BBC the following year.
And you will share it.
In this one-off 50-minute television special, the crew of the lightship Altares, consisting of pilots Captain Harry Masters and his daughter Jane, plus scientists Tom and Anna Bowen and their son David, make history as they travel to Alpha Centauri before choosing to push forward into deep space.
Okay, we go on.
In true Anderson fashion, disaster follows as an accident with the ship's photon drive sends the Altares out of control, beyond all known reference points.
So now we've got no idea how long we've been unconscious? or how far we've traveled.
With a return to Earth no longer an option, the Alteres is now lost in space and in surprisingly frequent danger from a variety of space phenomena.
Meteorite shower.
Supernova.
Black hole.
Soon after production came to an end on the first season of Space 1999, Gerry Anderson was commissioned to produce The Day After Tomorrow at the request of George Heinemann, then controller of children's programming at NBC.
What does that mean?
It means we may have a chance.
Heinemann was preparing a series of one-hour television specials aimed at a teenage audience under the umbrella title of Special Treat. This series would include a variety of documentaries, animated versions of classic literary stories, and action-adventure shows with an educational theme.
Yes, I do want to know what's out there in space.
Looking for someone to create a special that would explain Einstein's special theory of relativity and other space phenomena in an exciting way, Heinemann pitched the idea to Anderson, who then set to work with Space 1999 script editor Johnny Byrne to create the story.
Well, good luck. Until we meet again.
Filmed at Pinewood Studios over 10 days between the first and second season of Space 1999, the special does feel very much like it's set in an alternate universe of that show, albeit one where the moon never left orbit.
That's impossible.
The special's tone and visual style are also very similar, thanks in part to using many of the same production personnel, including director Charles Crichton and several of the show's actors.
We're ready to go.
Nick Tate was of course best known as Space 1999's Captain Alan Crash Carter, while Brian Blessed, Joanna Dunham and Don Fellows had all appeared in guest roles.
What is it, sweetheart?
It's all so confusing.
Child actors Martin Lev and Catherine Levy were new to the Anderson universe.
A universe not only stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we can imagine.
While rounding out the cast was Captain Blue and Commander Straker himself, Ed Bishop as the narrator, and Johnny Byrne's own dog Bones as Jane's dog Spring, who she had to leave behind. The Alteres itself was designed and built by Space 1999 model maker Martin Bauer, who was under the impression that the craft was actually intended to be used in that series.
Oh, we can't do it.
As a result, the ship looks very similar to the equally ill-fated Metaprobe and Ultraprobe from that series, while its launching point, Space Station Delta, was, appropriately enough, cannibalized from the spaceship Daria model seen in Mission of the Darians.
Looks like we're on our way.
Throughout the special, various other familiar pieces of art design and set can also be seen, such as Voyager 1's control console providing the same function on the Alteres, and Moonbase Alpha's nuclear generator door.
Radiation screen's operative.
Despite being aimed at a slightly younger audience than Space 1999's, The Day After Tomorrow managed to balance its goals of scientific education and entertaining adventure with admirable skill.
Just as Einstein predicted.
What a genius he was. He predicted all this before we'd even learned to fly, let alone travel through space.
Its science, although not 100% accurate, is certainly close enough to retain the viewer's interest, and is delivered in such a way that it doesn't feel like a lecture.
You think you know it all?
Just enough to get us where we're going.
The small cast are also rather likeable, and the fact that the Alteres crew is made up of 2 family units rather than a group of highly trained special agents gives the episode a rather endearing quality at times.
Just help each other. All we can. And hope that we make it.
The episode also retains something of Space 1999's pessimistic attitude towards the future.
They come from a world where natural resources have been squandered, where pollution and the haphazard destruction of the environment has put the future of humanity into jeopardy.
The adventure element of the special is largely up to Space 1999 standards too, although long-time Anderson fans may spot some similarities between this episode's story and that of Fireball XL5's Faster Than Light.
Lost all gonna drown.
I can't cut the drive.
We're gonna build up speed, and there's nothing we can do about it.
You just keep on accelerating. Easy. Easy, sweetheart.
I'll have to look at the main motor, Steve.
Right, we go in and relay.
You can only stay in there 10 minutes.
15 minutes maximum.
There's also a rather trippy journey through a black hole that plays a little like Space 1999's Black Sun on acid, but the episode remains a visual treat throughout.
But If we do survive this, there's no way back.
Although he had only been commissioned to produce a single episode, Anderson held out hope that The Day After Tomorrow might become a full series. However, that would never happen, although Special Treat would continue running on NBC for 9 seasons until 1985.
It's no good. We can't break free.
However, Anderson would soon receive the news that Space 1999 would be returning for an all-new second season, which would make further use of many props and models seen in The Day After Tomorrow. Many of the Altair's computer banks would turn up in Moonbase Alpha's new command center, while the main control console would be seen in the weapons section and the fire suit would return in the Bringers of Wonder.
How do you feel?
Never better.
Nick Tate and Brian Blessed would also be returning for the new season.
Our destinies are linked, you know.
While composer Derek Wadsworth would take over from Barry Gray thanks to his work scoring The Day After Tomorrow.
Hang on. We could be in for some gravitational turbulence.
The Day After Tomorrow is now available on DVD, and of all the Gerry Anderson television pilots that never went to a full series, this is the one that seems to have had the most potential.
It's our first real break we've had, Tom.
It's unlikely that the limited format of one unarmed spacecraft alone in the void could have sustained multiple installments, but the episode concludes on an open-ended note that does leave you wondering where a miniseries might have taken the Altaires next.
One thing is sure. This is not the final word. Not the end, but the beginning.
Although the original novelization written to accompany the special back in the 1970s was never released, a brand new novelization by Gregory Norris was published by Anderson Entertainment in October 2017, with a sequel novel to finally continue the story being released in 2019.
Looks like we get to visit a planet after all, David.
45 years after the Altaires was first launched, The Day After Tomorrow is still an enjoyable watch, particularly for Space 1999 fans.
We've done it.
Although we'd never see any further adventures from the Altaires crew on television, their one mission still holds up to repeat viewings, and The Day After Tomorrow's recent reincarnation on the printed page proves that there are always more stories to tell in almost every corner of the Gerry Anderson universe. Space Police entered production in 1986 and was the very first step on the road that would eventually lead to Space Precinct.
All right, settle down.
This 55-minute pilot film took viewers to planet Tsar XL5 and the orbiting station house of Precinct 44 East, where Lieutenant Chuck Brogan and his team are working hard to bring down the criminal organization of the evil VLAN. After an attempt on the life of the president, Brogan suggests he postpone his trip to the city of Ultraville aboard his private monotrain. But this request falls on deaf ears.
Listen to me, Brogan. I don't give way to threats of terrorism. You do what you have to. I'm going to Ultraville.
Little does the president realise, though, that his personal aide Bron has been blackmailed by VLAN into turning over the train security codes.
They've got my family. I had no choice.
And the train is soon hurtling out of control towards a bridge that isn't there anymore. With time running out, Brogan's team must use all their otherworldly powers to save the president's train and thwart VLAN's evil plot. The idea for Space Police came to Anderson in 1983, while on a flight back from New York. He was trying to work out why television executives in the States weren't interested in his previous production, Terrorhawks.
I have a theory.
They claimed it was because puppet shows weren't popular with American audiences.
The heck you say?
Yet the massive success of the Muppets on television and film, plus various other big movies of the time, suggested otherwise.
Why do we watch it? Why do you watch it?
Anderson and his business partner Christopher Burr soon realised that it was only puppet versions of human beings that the executives were objecting to. Puppets of bizarre alien creatures were absolutely fine. Also noticing the popularity of police television drama series, they set to work devising a science fiction concept that would combine human actors with alien puppets. And Anderson collaborated on a script with writer Tony Barwick, titled Star Laws.
I'm Brogan, Lieutenant Brogan. For 15 years I worked for the NYPD, New York Police Department. Now I'm with Space Police.
Anderson only ever had one man in mind to play the leader of his Space Police force, longtime collaborator Shane Rimmer as Lieutenant Chuck Brogan.
You get a kick out of it, right?
Well, it's all part of the game plan.
Brogan's team would consist of Catherine Chevalier as Officer Kathy Costello, an alien officer from Special Division with heightened senses named Bats, a trio of felinoid officers named Tom, Dick and Harry, and the robotic secretarial assistant Slow-Mo.
I know. Not right now, Slow-Mo.
All the other characters seen in the episode would be brought to life either by Terrorhawk-style hand puppets or stop-motion animation.
Stupid mutt.
With the new puppets being referred to as Galactronic puppets.
Well, well.
Anderson's former Supermarionation puppet supervisor, Christine Glanville, served the same function for these new puppets, and actually found herself inside the costume of Officer Tom.
Let's hear it for the fat man. All right, knock it off.
The human actors in Space Police are rarely seen directly interacting with the puppets, although in some scenes you might not even realise it.
I'm sure he would like to see the both of us dead. Me for asking you to police this planet.
And me for accepting, sir.
However, Tom, Dick, Harry and Bats have a cunning way around this problem. They too can become puppets that look very similar to their full-body counterparts.
Right.
The switch is made skillfully enough that your brain might not even register the exact moment that it happens.
Luckily I landed right on my brains, Mr. President.
And attention is only really drawn to it in the second half of the episode, when Costello is suddenly revealed to be a shape-shifting robot.
Every time she does that, I don't believe it.
Although the episode refuses to tell us exactly what she is, the reason for this ability becomes clear by the story's finale. It's so that Kathy can also become a puppet and join her puppet colleagues saving the puppet president.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
This unfortunately has the unintended side effect of making Shane Rimmer's Lieutenant Brogan mostly unnecessary to the final act of the story, since, ironically for the voice of Scott Tracy, he's the only one who can't turn into a puppet and join in the rescue. Over the next few years, Anderson would be busy showing off Space Police to various networks and potential backers, although the episode's settings and characters would gradually begin to fall away as the concept was refined.
Oh, shoot.
The pilot was soon recut into a 2-minute trailer.
The best in live-action performances, breathtaking model work, and spectacular special effects will make this the TV space series of the decade.
And then followed up by a new 5-minute presentation, Space Police Reloaded.
After 15 years with the New York Police Department, Lieutenant Chuck Brogan needs a change, and he gets one.
Which took some of Space Police's more interesting visual elements and intercut them with newly shot live-action scenes.
This is Brogan.
These new scenes served two purposes: to show off the even more sophisticated animatronics that would bring the show's aliens to life, and to add the characters of Officers Haldane and Castle, plus early versions of Beazle and Fredo. While this Beazle looks very similar to the Creons we'd come to know in Space Precinct, and not too unlike VLAN's henchman E. Vile, Fredo looks almost nothing like the Tarns from Space Precinct, although he does have their ability of telekinesis, originally Officer Tom's ability in Space Police.
Eat your heart out, Isaac Newton.
The only alien to make it to Space Precinct almost unchanged was Reloaded's bank robber, known on the set as Cyril, who appears in the opening titles of the first 3 episodes before being repainted to play Commissioner Tev in the episode Takeover.
Are you free tonight?
Yes, I am. But unfortunately, you're not.
Although none of the human actors seen in Space Police or Space Police Reloaded would make it into Space Precinct, several unseen performers did. Space Police voice artists David Healy and Gary Martin can both be heard in the Reloaded trailer, and would continue to provide voices in Space Precinct. Their Space Police voice colleagues Jeff Harding and Kate Harper would both also appear in the episode Hate Street.
Of all the ravines in all the world.
You're a worm.
Yeah, but a really nice worm. Come on, just one drink.
With Harper also being seen and heard in many other episodes of the show.
I'll take that as a compliment.
From the Reloaded cast, alien actors Rob Thurtle and Andy Dawson would continue to play aliens throughout Space Precinct. Reloaded also featured 2 other noteworthy actors.
Who are these men, sir?
You do!
Bruce Bower, clearly still very angry about that whole Waldorf salad business, plays Brogan and Haldane's superior back on Earth, while Jane Castle was played by Chloe Annette. Daughter of Space Police Reloaded's director Paul Annette, she appears to be the only one of the human characters who's entirely comfortable with what she's being asked to do, and so it's rather a shame that we didn't get to see her in Space Precinct itself.
You are pushy, arrogant, conceited, self-obsessed, and utterly insensitive.
She likes me.
However, Chloe Annette would find herself back in the world of science fiction in 1997, when she joined the cast of the hit BBC series Crime Traveller.
Show off.
Space Police and Space Police Reloaded are now available on the Lost Worlds of Gerry Anderson DVD, which also includes surviving Space Police film elements and over 2 hours of rushes from Space Police Reloaded, which are well worth a look if you're in the mood to have all your illusions about the glamour of television production permanently crushed.
Let's go!
If you've ever wondered what a cross between Terrorhawks and Space Precinct might look like, then Space Police is certainly worth watching, if only to marvel at what might have been.
How was it?
Steve Begg's model effect sequences are as impressive as ever, the alien characters are well realised, and it's nice to see Shane Rimmer get a starring role in a live-action Anderson production.
Hey, sometimes us old-timers can be a bit handy, huh?
However, most likely due to the budget, the episode feels very small scale, as Tsar XL5 appears to consist only of a nightclub, a warehouse, and 1,000 miles of desert monorail track.
Spectacular, isn't it?
Oh, yes, sir.
As for Reloaded, although its content and tone are much closer to Space Precinct, it also includes one of Precinct's more infamous problems.
How much they paying you, punk?
I wanna see a lawyer!
Want to see a plastic surgeon?
The actor playing Brogan is so heavily and noticeably overdubbed that the entire production feels very cheesy as a result, almost like something Garth Marenghi might cobble together in an afternoon. Since it was never intended for broadcast though, its flaws can be more easily forgiven, and Space Police Reloaded would help secure the financing for and future of Anderson's Hill Street Blues in Space idea.
Let's intellectualize, let's keep one step ahead.
And hey! Let's be careful out there.
After 2 attempts at the concept, the 3rd time would be the charm, as Space Precinct finally entered production in 1994. But that's another story.
Watch this space.
The name's Spanner. Dick Spanner. Private investigator.
Dick Spanner, PI, was first unleashed on the unsuspecting British public in May 1987.
What an entrance.
Set in a parallel universe not far from here, the show followed the cases of Dick Spanner, a robotic private detective living in a futuristic and dangerous city known as the Big Pear. Across 22 6-minute episodes, Dick would take a trip to Mexico in search of Harry the Human Cannonball, who had disappeared after he was fired, and then to the glittering lights of Ivywood, where he became embroiled in a battle between the talls and the smalls while searching for the Maltese parrot.
What's up, Dick?
Dick's investigations would often be aided by the glamorous Mae East.
When she moved, it was like watching a sack full of bowling balls.
Frustrated by the suspicious Lieutenant O'Grady.
O'Grady called me aside. I called him Lieutenant O'Grady.
And almost thwarted by such dastardly villains as Sidney Sidestreet, mob boss Mendoza, circus owner Signor Oliver, and movie director Eric von Strongbow.
I'd spotted the resemblance. I'd figured they were identical triplets.
Following completion of Terrorhawks, Gerry Anderson had been producing television commercials, but was always open to new ideas from people who had worked with him previously. Terry Adlam, a former Terrorhawks visual effects assistant, was looking to work on these commercials as a storyboard artist, and came to a meeting with Anderson armed with a portfolio of sketches and doodles. Anderson was particularly taken with an image of a robotic private detective, and Adlam pitched the character to him on the spot as a combination of Philip Marlowe and Inspector Clouseau living in a futuristic Blade Runner-style universe.
I told him the whole damn thing from the beginning.
Anderson instantly saw the potential of the character and teamed Adlam with writer Tony Barwick to begin working on scripts. Barwick, who had most recently written 35 of the 39 episodes of Terrorhawks and had been primarily responsible for the show's drastic shift towards comedy, was a perfect partner for the pun-loving Adlam, and his assignment to the new series ensured that it would be the strangest and silliest Anderson production of all time.
I took the elevator up to the 14th floor. My office is on the 15th, but that's another story.
The scripts would be packed with bad jokes and painful puns, supported by whatever visual gags the team had dreamt up in the bar the previous lunchtime.
I settle for a rusty nail.
The result was a series in which the narrative often took second place to the jokes, which ran the gauntlet from amusing wordplay to Looney Tunes-style slapstick, and which was slightly more risque than any previous Anderson production. With the comedic tone of the series now firmly set, the first 6-minute episode was shot in April 1985 at Bray Studios, which had previously served as the base of production for both Terrorhawks and the Space 1999 model department.
Remember that one?
And, appropriately enough, Terrorhawks effects director Steve Begg joined the team to help bring Dick to life.
I told them to hold their heads high.
In another noticeable departure from what had gone before, the series would be produced using stop-motion animation. Although stop-motion had occasionally been used in previous Anderson series, most notably in Terrorhawks, this would be the first of his series to be entirely animated in this way.
I left him to it.
This pilot was then pitched to broadcasters with the aim of getting a commission for a full series, which finally came in the form of a request from Channel 4 for 22 6-minute episodes. The 22 episodes would actually form two 11-part stories, The Case of the Human Cannonball and The Case of the Maltese Parrot. Each installment would end with a cliffhanger that often saw Dick plunging to his doom, frantically searching his pockets for exactly the wrong tool to get him out of this latest jam.
German limbo dancing by Unter der Bar. Jump on Jehoshaphat. How many times can you be wrong?
Dick Spanner wasn't an especially big-budget production, which prohibited the hiring of a full voice cast. As a result, Dick's narration would have to tell pretty much the whole story, and his voice would be provided by none other than Scott Tracy himself, Shane Rimmer.
It was time to hit the sack. The sharp stab of pain made me realize it was a dumb move.
Rimmer would prove to be a perfect fit for the character, playing Spanner absolutely dead straight in order to heighten the madness going on around him, while also giving the character a bizarre dignity that only made his constant failure even more amusing. Other character voices were provided as needed by members of the production team, with the glamorous Mae East being voiced by none other than Terry Adlam himself. The series would air in the UK as part of Network 7, Channel 4's new Sunday lunchtime magazine programme for young adults, with each episode usually appearing at about 1:20 p.m.
The press was onto it like a shot.
Can't wait! This is a scoop!
The show was well received by both the channel and viewers alike, with its outrageous puns and deeply surreal visuals proving particularly popular with those still recovering from the night before. While Dick was pounding the streets of the Big Pear, Anderson had been producing a series of commercials for Tennant's Pilsner, starring a very similar robotic private eye.
Lou Tennant's the name.
Lou Tennant, voiced by Vivian Stanshall, also lived in a surreal stop-motion universe and had a girlfriend who bore a strong resemblance to Mae East.
I asked the barman for a Tennant's Pilsner. The cool taste was music inside me.
These ads usually ended with Lou being forced to choose between his Tennant's Pilsner or some measure of fame and fortune, and always selecting the latter.
Tennant's Pilsner. It's good, but not that good.
Although Dick Spanner would not return for Network 7's second series, the show was so popular that Channel 4 would schedule separate late-night and evening repeats of both adventures that recut each 11-part story into two 25-minute installments.
Well, when one door shuts, another door closes.
These would be the last chance to catch Dick on British television, although a brief clip from the series would later appear in an episode of Anderson's late 90s stop-motion fantasy series, Lavender Castle.
Ripper! I haven't seen this for years!
In 2007, Dick Spanner was finally released on DVD, but much to the dismay of many fans, the episodes were cropped into widescreen and given an entirely new musical score and new end credits.
Another dumb move.
It would be another 10 years before the complete, uncut Dick arrived on DVD. This time featuring all 22 episodes in their original format, plus the Channel 4 compilation versions.
Telegram for Mr. Spanner!
Even more exciting was the inclusion of several new adventures for Spanner, one of which was a recently rediscovered first installment of an abandoned third Dick Spanner story from 1987. This time with Terrorhawks actor Jeremy Hitchin providing the title character's voice.
The cold was getting to me. It was freezing my nuts off.
However, Shane Rimmer would also be back to voice Dick for a new two-part animatic, The Case of the Screaming Dane, written, drawn and directed by Adlam.
Damn and beavers! I'd lost them. But all the signs seemed to indicate they were heading for the docks.
This was to be Shane's final association with the character before he passed away in May 2019, leaving behind a legacy of television and film work that included many memorable contributions to the Gerry Anderson universe.
Dick Spanner, what a hoot! He was probably the most lovable character I was ever associated with.
Despite being one of the most unusual and outlandish Gerry Anderson shows, Dick Spanner is also one of the funniest and most creative he ever produced.
They just don't write stuff that good today.
Although largely a parody of the classic detective genre and the golden age of Hollywood, the series operated on the irresistible principle that no joke was too broad, too irrelevant, or too painful.
I was right. It was custody.
And as a result, appealed to both adults and children alike, providing you cover their eyes during the naughty bits. Each story builds to a conclusion that has to be seen to be believed, and at the centre of all this madness is Shane Rimmer's reliably deadpan Spanner, struggling to keep his cool in a world where nothing makes sense.
This is over the top. Way over the top.
Even though some of the jokes really should come with health warnings, Dick Spanner is a series that's very difficult to dislike, and can only really be summed up in one word.
Bizarre.
Who is it keeps saying that?